Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. Many of you have been asking for smaller projects. Well, this may be just the ticket. It's a desktop writing case. We'll make two, one out of cherry and one out of recycled timber. We'll take you where we found the original next, right here on the new Yankee Workshop.
The new Yankee Workshop features the craftsmanship of Norm Abram.
This antique shop is one of the best kept secrets in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we want to keep it that way because inside there's a treasure house of European country antiques. Now, for years this building was used as a hardware store. In fact, the landlord still comes in here 3 days a week. Look at this corner, just like it was in the 19th century. Now he comes in and he'll repair lamps or your electric waffle iron. But we're here today to look at antiques. Let's see if we can find Ed Stewart and his mom, Eileen. Hi, Eileen.
Hey, Norm.
Hi, Ed.
See you.
Well, today I'm looking for sort of a writing desk, one of those slant-top writing desks.
Do you want something with drawers, or?
No, I just want it to open up so there's storage on the inside.
Great. Well, let's take a look. I just got one in.
Boy, you're packed in here.
Yeah, we just got a container in.
Oh,
just come back from England and France.
That's an old bitch.
Yeah, it's an old Irish piece.
$95. I can make that. Nice painted piece.
Well, here's what I had in mind. No?
Oh, okay.
This is an English slant-top desk. Pine.
So it's got a big lid that opens up.
A lot of storage.
Gives me the storage area that I want.
And if you look down the bottom here, you can tell that at some point this was a shorter desk.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was raised up.
They've lap jointed the legs to raise it up a bit. I guess maybe so you could stand at it. Does that devalue the piece?
Well, not always. I mean, in this case, probably what happened was there wasn't enough room to really sit comfortably. So if you put in a new chair in here, you'd be hitting the legs.
Okay.
So they raised it up.
Well, it's a little bit bigger than what I'm looking for. I'd like something that's easily portable that you could put on a dresser or something like that.
So like a little slant-top desktop, like a valet almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come down this way.
These tables.
Actually, to go with that small little desk, Norm, I'm going to show you a nice little child's chair.
Look at that. Look at the shape of that back leg.
Yeah, the back leg's nice and curved.
Well, it's nice, but maybe another day. I'm just after that desk today.
Okay, let's take a look. It's over here.
Ooh, look at this. What's this? A game cupboard.
Yeah, that's a French piece, original paint.
Ooh, I've never seen anything like that.
Probably how's a TV today. And here we go.
Ah, now this is more of what I had in mind.
Also English.
Nice little storage compartment. Brass lock.
It's got beautiful dovetails in the corner.
Yeah, that's nice. Boy, it's too bad it's got this split in the top.
Oh, that's not a split. That's character. No?
Okay.
Got another little bit more character up there.
And I like this lip because you can put paper on it and it won't slide out if you're actually going to write a note or something.
Or a pencil.
And I like the fact that the base goes beyond the sides and it's just nicely rounded over. It's nice and light, so it's easy to move around. How much for this?
Well, it's marked $425. For you, be $395.
$395. That's a little high.
Let's go have a cup of coffee and talk about it.
Okay. Well, it took me a while, but eventually I convinced Ed to let me take the writing case home on approval. Now, this piece is made out of pine, and pine is very soft for a writing surface. So what I think I'm going to do is build two of these cases out of hardwood, one out of chestnut, one out of cherry, using different joinery techniques. If you'd like to build a version of our desktop writing case, a measure drawing is available with the materials list, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. I want to start with the chestnut case. I had some antique chestnut timber stored at the shop. I ran it through my surface planer, and I ended up with pieces like this. I like the fact that we have these wormholes. It'll add a lot of character to the piece. For the writing surface, I kept the best two pieces of chestnut I had. I don't want too many defects in it. I want it to be nice and flat. It's a little bit thicker than I need. I want to glue these two pieces together. First thing I have to do is clean up this edge so it's an invisible joint. For that, I'm going to turn to the joiner. But before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now, I can't tell you how many emails we get asking, if I don't have a joiner, how do I straighten the edge of a board? Well, you could use a hand plane, but that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. Let's see how we did. Okay, that's nice and tight. The joint will be invisible. Now I need about 18 inches overall width for this desktop writing surface, and since I have a split here, I'm going to start from this end, go 18, back off 2 inches, lay out for a biscuit, 2 inches from this end, 1 in the middle. All right, a little bit of glue on each edge of the joint and a little bit of glue in the biscuit slots. We'll put it all together and clamp it up. The next step is to build the box of the writing case. On the antique original, they used a dovetail joint. And that's a very nice joint. I'll save it for the cherry case. For the chestnut case, I'm going to use a slightly different joint. It's called a box joint. It's a very strong joint, and it's very attractive. Let me show you how we make them. To make box joints at the table saw, you need your miter gauge and a dado head. I've set up the dado head for 3/8 of an inch width, which is the size of the pins on the box joint. The first thing that I did was take a piece of scrap and run it through the dado cutter, one pass. Then I ripped down some hardwood so I could get some strips that would fit in that joint. Not too tight, not too loose. That's the key to this jig working properly. For the jig itself, I'm going to use a piece of 6-inch by 12-inch, 3/4 inch plywood. I take 2 of the hardwood strips, butt them up against the side of my miter gauge, and then bring the plywood right flush on that outer end and attach it with a screw. Now I'm going to make a pass through that stack of cutters and chippers. Okay, now I can remove the jig, turn it over, take a small piece of hardwood, which I've pre-drilled a hole in, set it in the slot, and attach it with a screw. Okay, now I can reattach it to the miter gauge, this time flush to the end. With the jig securely attached, I'll run it through the dado. Now here I very carefully labeled the corners of the box so that I keep them in the right orientation all the time. The first thing I do is take one piece, place it in the jig, take a piece of hardwood exactly the same width as this pin, place it against the pin, slide the stock against it, and run it through. Now with the first pass complete, I slide it over once again, take the back, the matching corner, put that in the jig, and I'm going to clamp the 2 pieces together. It'll be easier to keep them straight. Each time I make a pass, I'm going to move it over and drop it over the pin until I get all the way across the piece. Okay, let's see how that lines up. That's good. 3 more to go. The writing surface is at a slight slope. That means I have to cut an angle on the side pieces. I've laid out the angle on one of my side pieces, and I brought out my tapering jig. I've made it so that the line is parallel to the blade, and I've slid the fence over to just leave the line. We'll trim it on the joiner. the front of the box needs to have a bevel on it to match the slope of the side. I can do that at the joiner. To set the joiner for the right bevel, I just take the side piece, set the slope on the table, and then tip the fence until it hits the end. When that's set, I can run the front through. It'll take several passes until it's flush with the side. Okay, let's check it. That's what we want. Now we can glue it up. The advantage of this joint and joints like it are the numerous glue surfaces. All right, I'll clean up the glue on the inside corners, set this aside to dry, and we'll work on the top. Well, now it's time for the surface planer. And here I'm lucky because I have a 15-inch wide planer. Now, if I didn't have a planer this wide, I would take narrower boards, plane them down to the final thickness, glue it all together, and sand the joint smooth. I have to run the blank for the top and the breadboard edges through. Here I'm cutting the field of the writing surface to size. I've squared up one end using my panel cutter. Now I can take the square end, place it up against my rip fence, and cut it to length. Let's look at how they attach the breadboard edge to the field on the antique. They nailed it every 2 inches, and that presented some problems. Wood wants to expand and contract across the grain with change in humidity. Along the grain, it doesn't move very much. So as the field started to shrink, it couldn't move, so it split at its weakest point. Also, the breadboard edge wedged up against the shelf as this edge started to shrink away. And because the hinge was attached, it split right here. Now I'm going to try to solve that problem by gluing the breadboard edge right in this area, but letting it float the rest of the way and be held in place with some dowel pins. Now what I'm going to use is some biscuits to connect it together. In the field, I'm going to cut a number 10 biscuit slot. Here's a number 10 biscuit. You can see there's not very much room there to put a dowel pin in. So instead of using a number 10 biscuit, I'll use a number 20 biscuit. Now I have about a 1/2 inch of material. In the corresponding slot in the breadboard edge, I'm going to do what's called a maximum cut on the plate joiner. That gives me plenty of room so that it can move back and forth as the field expands and contracts. Now I'm just going to take some number 20 biscuits, put them in the field, and set it aside to dry. Here's the blank for the bottom of our writing case. It's made up of several narrow pieces of chestnut that I glued together. And now is when I'll turn to my wide belt sander to smooth it all out. If I didn't have the wide belt sander, I'd go over it quickly with a belt sander to make the joints even, and then I'd fine-tune it with my random orbit sander. Here I've just treated the edges of that bottom panel. I used a feather board to hold the stock tightly down against the table, and the bit is just a 1/2 inch radius roundover bit. Now I'll turn to my stationary sander and remove the excess material from the box joints. Now this piece of chestnut is going to be the top shelf. On the antique original, they ran a thin strip to cover the end grain and one along the back, which is unnecessary because the grain is running in the same direction. So what I'm going to do is just make a small miter cut, remove the end, and then attach a small strip that'll also be mitered. Now a little glue at the mitered end, because this piece is going to want to move. I want to keep the joint tight. Where the top shelf meets the writing surface, I want to split the angle, and that'll be about 5 degrees. Now I'm back to work on the writing surface. I've clamped the breadboard edges on, no glue, and I've put some scrap pieces underneath because the next step is to drill some holes through for dowel pins, and I don't want them to blow out on the back side. Now with the top clamped to the bench, I can remove the breadboard edge. And this end I want to keep fixed because I'll hinge this edge of the top. But these two biscuits with the holes, I want to elongate the hole using my jigsaw so that there'll be room for movement. Now you'll notice that I've gone on each side of the hole slightly, angling it towards the edge. That way the piece will still be able to move this way, but it won't pull away, opening up the joint. Okay, now I'm putting some glue just on the biscuit that's going to be close to the hinged side and a little bit in the slot. Then I'll clamp the whole assembly together and install the dowel pins. To secure the shelf, I'm using 3 screws, no glue, and I'm going to fill the counter bore with a little plug, cut it and sand it flush. Now I'm back to the top. The breadboard edges have set in position. I've sanded everything smooth, and I want to make a bevel along the edge that meets that top shelf. So once again, I've tipped my saw to 5 degrees. Now for a little strip along the bottom edge, which will hold the paper and the pencil, just putting glue on the field. I'll hold it flush to the bottom and attach it with a few brads. The last few minutes I laid out for this half mortise lock. I've removed some material with my router for the body of the lock. The rest of the work I'll do with the chisel. Setting these hinges in mortises makes a nice clean line. Here I'm centering the desk assembly on the bottom. Once that's good, I'll flip it over and pre-drill for some screws. No glue. You'll notice that I've elongated the holes that are closest to the front and the back, and that will allow some movement of the bottom. Okay, that takes care of our Chestnut desktop writing case. And that's going to provide some good storage and a nice writing surface. This one is ready for the finishing room. Tomorrow we'll make one out of cherry. Well, good morning. I got to the shop early today and started working on the cherry desktop writing case. Now there are some similarities to the Chestnut one. The bottom is the same size with the same details. The writing surface is the same, breadboard edge again, with a little strip at the bottom to hold the paper and the pencil. And that top shelf has the same edge band with the small miter on the end grain. The only difference that's going to happen in this project is how I join the corners. Before we machine any dovetails, let's talk about the nomenclature. Here's a sample of a through dovetail joint. If I pull it apart, see that this is the tailboard. This is the pin board. The pins slip between the tails, giving the joint strength. A well laid out joint has a half pin at this edge and this edge, giving strength over the whole corner. Now to cut these dovetails, I'm going to use a new jig that I'll use with my router. It's made out of highly machined aluminum. It has fingers which can be adjusted for any dovetail layout that I want. There's a MDF board on each side as a sacrificial strip. I cut the pins on this side and I cut the tails on the other side. There are two handles which make it handy to guide on my router table. Now let me show you how I set up the pieces. I take some 1/4-inch spacers and set them on top of the fingers. Then I take the tail board with the inside against the jig and against this little stop. Then I take the pin board, again with the inside facing the jig, set it on the spacer and against the stop, and clamp the two pieces in place. Now you'll see here at my router station that I've removed the fence, and I've set up to cut the tails first. I have a dovetailing bit which has a ball bearing on it which will ride right up against the jig. Now before I can cut the tails, I remove the spacer strip and I'm ready to go. Okay, it's as easy as that to cut the tails. Now I turn the jig around, change the bit and set it at exactly the same height, and machine the pins. See how we did. Oh, that's nice. 3 more corners to go, and I'll assemble the cherry case. Well, there they are. The antique original, one in chestnut, one in cherry. Now let's finish them. Cherry is a difficult wood to stain because it blotches. Now we've used a natural finish, but that doesn't conceal the differences in color. That's why furniture makers usually stain or dye their pieces. The best stain to use is one like this, a gel stain. This one happens to be mixed with an oil, so you put it on like an oil finish. Apply a nice even coat with a foam brush, let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes, and wipe off the excess. In a couple hours, I repeat the process, and so on until I get the look I want. For the antique chestnut version, there's no better finish than a clear one. Let the wood speak. What I'm using here is a hand rub poly. You put it on with a clean cloth, let it dry, sand it with some 220 grit sandpaper, and put on another coat. 3 coats should do the job. Well, here are our desktop writing cases with the finishes complete. A couple more coats of clear poly went on the chestnut one. The gel stain did a nice job evening out the color and texture of the cherry, but for a protective finish I added a coat of gloss polyurethane. These were nice projects.